Pydantic AI's core mechanism for routing work between agents lives in the output type parameter, which accepts output functions and Pydantic models together, letting one agent hand control to another rather than solving a problem itself. The code you are about to see sets up a router agent that delegates natural language SQL requests to a specialized SQL agent, using custom failure models and ModelRetry to surface errors back up the chain. The artifact initializes SQL agent with Run SQL Query and SQL Failure as its output choices, then defines handoff to SQL agent as an output function that drops the final message before forwarding the conversation, and finally constructs router agent with handoff to SQL agent and router failure so the model can decide whether to delegate or admit it cannot help.
Import Ray. From Pydantic import base model. From Pydantic AI import agent, ModelRetry, RunContext, unexpected model behavior. Class row base model. Name, SDR. Country, SDR. Tables. Capital cities. Row name equals Amsterdam. Country equals Netherlands. Row name equals Mexico City. Country equals Mexico. Class SQL failure base model. An unrecoverable failure. Only use this when you can't change the query to make it work. Explanation, SDR. Def run SQL query, SDR list row. Run a SQL query on the database. Select table equals re. Match select plus from \w plus, query. If select table. Column names equals select table.group1. If column names equals asterisk. Raise model reach only. Select asterisk is supported. You'll have to do column filtering manually. Table name equals select table group 2. If table name not in tables. Raise model retry. F unknown table, table name and query. Available tables. Jointables keys. Return table stable name. Raise model retrieve unsupported query. Query. SQL agent equals agent none. List row SQL failure. OpenAI GPT-5 2. Output type equals run SQL query. SQL failure. Instructions equals you are a SQL agent that can run SQL queries on a database. Async def handoff to SQL agent text. RunContext query. SDR list row. I take natural language queries, turn them into SQL, and run them on a database. Hash drop the final message with the output tool call, as it shouldn't be passed on to the SQL agent. Messages equals ctx, messages -1. Try. Result equals await SQL agent. Run query, message history equals messages. Output equals result output. If instance output, SQL failure. Raise model retrieve SQL agent failed. Output explanation. Return output. Accept unexpected model behavior as E. Hash bubble up potentially retrievable errors to the router agent. If cause, eCause and instance cause, model retry. Raise model retrieve SQL agent failed. Cause message from E. LC. Raise. Class router failure base model. Use me when no appropriate agent is found or the used agent failed. Explanation, SDR. Router agent equals agent none. List row, router failure. OpenAI GPT-5 2. Output type equals handoff to SQL agent, router failure. Instructions equals you are a router to other agents. Never try to solve a problem yourself, just pass it on. Result, router agent. Run sync select the names and countries of all capitals. Print result, output. Row name equals Amsterdam. Country equals Netherlands. Row name equals Mexico City. Country equals Mexico. Result equals router agent. Run sync select all pets. Print result, output. Router failure explanation equals the requested table pets does not exist in the database. The only available table is capital cities, which does not contain data about pets. Result equals router agent. Run sync how do I fly from Amsterdam to Mexico City. Printer result output. Router failure explanation equals I am not equipped to provide travel information, such as flights from Amsterdam to Mexico City.
Router agent delegating to a SQL agent via output functions. The router agent has two output types: handoff to SQL agent and a sync function that runs the SQL agent with the user query and message history, then returns rows or raises model retry on failure, and router failure a structured fallback when the request doesn't match any capability. The SQL agent similarly uses output functions, run SQL query and SQL failure, where run SQL query validates the query against a mock table and raises model retry for unsupported syntax or unknown tables. Handoff happens through message history, where ctx.messages -1 strips the final output tool call before passing context to the downstream agent. Model retry exceptions bubble up from SQL agent through handoff to SQL agent, wrapping the message so the router agent can surface a clean failure. This pattern keeps each agent focused on one concern while preserving conversation history across boundaries. The trade-off is coupling through shared message history, but it enables multi-agent workflows without a central orchestration layer. Using output functions instead of tools means the model is forced to commit to one path, preventing ambiguous partial tool usage. Router failure and SQL failure as output types give the model explicit failure schemas to return rather than free text, which keeps output structured and machine parsable. Let's break it down.
Import Ray. From Pydantic import base model.
Imports Ray for regular expressions and base model from Pydantic for data validation.
Class row base model. Name, SDR. Country, SDR.
Defines a Pydantic model called row with two string fields, name and country.
Tables. Capital cities.
Creates a dictionary named tables with a key capital cities, mapped to an open list that will hold city data.
Class SQL failure base model. An unrecoverable failure. Only use this when you can't change the query to make it work. Explanation, SDR.
Defines a failure model with a single string field for error explanations, marked as an unrecoverable failure where the query cannot be adjusted.
Def run SQL query, SDR list row. Run a SQL query on the database. Select table equals re. Match select plus from \w plus, query. If select table.
Defines a function that takes a SQL query string and returns a list of row objects. Uses a regex to parse select queries, capturing the column list and table name, then checks whether the query matched.
SQL agent equals agent none. List row, SQL failure. OpenAI, GPT-5 2.
Creates a SQL agent variable bound to an agent instance typed to output either a list of row objects or a SQL failure. Initialized with the OpenAI GPT-5 2 model provider.
Async def handoff to SQL agent text. RunContext query, SDR list row. I take natural language queries, turn them into SQL, and run them on a database.
Defines an async function named handoff to SQL agent that accepts a RunContext and a string query, returns a list of row objects, and documents its purpose in the docstring.
Hash drop the final message with the output tool call, as it shouldn't be passed on to the SQL agent. Messages equals ctx, Messages -1.
Drops the final message from ctx. Messages, which holds an output tool call and stores the trimmed list in messages.
Try. Result equals await SQL agent. Run query, message history equals messages.
Awaits the SQL agent to process the query with the provided message history, storing the run result in result.
Class router failure base model. Use me when no appropriate agent is found or the used agent failed. Explanation, SDR.
Defines a Pydantic model named router failure with one string field explanation, used to carry a failure reason when no suitable agent is found or an agent run fails.
Router agent equals agent none. List row, router failure. OpenAI, GPT-5-2.
Assigns router agent to a Pydantic AI agent configured for the OpenAI GPT-5-2 model, type to return either a list of row objects or a router failure. The dependency type is none, meaning no runtime dependencies are declared at construction.
Result router agent. Run sync select the names and countries of all capitals. Print result output.
Invokes the router agent synchronously with the query, select the names and countries of all capitals, and captures the result. The next line prints the agent's response output.
Result equals router agent. Run sync select all pets. Print result output.
Calls router agent's run sync method with the prompt select all pets, storing the returned run result in result. Then prints the repr of the output field from that result.
Router failure explanation equals the requested table pets does not exist in the database. The only available table is capital cities, which does not contain data about pets.
Raises a router failure exception indicating the pets table doesn't exist in the database, noting that only capital cities is available and contains no pet data.
Result equals router agent. Run sync how do I fly from Amsterdam to Mexico City.
Invokes the router agent synchronously with the query, how do I fly from Amsterdam to Mexico City, and stores the returned run result in result.
Print result output.
Prints the developer-style representation of the agent's output, showing its type and value rather than a formatted display.
Router failure explanation equals I am not equipped to provide travel information, such as flights from Amsterdam to Mexico City.
Raises a router failure, indicating the agent cannot provide travel information, like flights from Amsterdam to Mexico City. Output type is the lever. It lets an agent either hand control off to another agent via an output function or return a structured failure model. And the router agent and SQL agent both use this same mechanism to stay single purpose while composing into a workflow. The handoff strips the final tool call message before passing conversation history downstream, so context survives the boundary without leaking routing artifacts. ModelRetry bubbles up through that boundary, giving the router clean failure information to surface as router failure. The trade-off is that shared message history creates coupling, but it avoids needing a central orchestrator, and using output functions instead of tools forces the model to commit to one path rather than partial ambiguous usage.
The RunContext that carries every message, but drops the one it was born to hold.